pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for joining us in person and on Zoom. The purpose of tonight's meeting is to discuss the proposed plan of merger of the town and village of Ludlow, Vermont. With that, I'd like to open it up to Miss Penny Wu if she has anything to add.
I'll just say that this is the first of 4 public hearings, 2 for the town and 2 for the village. We will have the vote on March 24th, next month, if everything goes through. And just a little bit of background, the town select board and village trustees developed a committee to essentially put together this proposed plan of merger that most of you have. If you don't have one, let me know, please. But the committee was comprised of members from the select board, the trustees, members of the public, and town council. And there were some meetings last year. This proposed document is available online and in the building, and we have some extra copies. Parts of the proposal are guided by statute, and tonight... Sure. I'm sorry. Is that better, Mr. Greenslit? I apologize. Parts of the proposal are guided by statute, and tonight's hearing is to gather information and answer questions. Tonight is not for debate, and no decisions will be made tonight.
Thank you, Ms. Wu.
Thank you.
If anybody would like to be the first member of the public to ask any questions, we just ask that you please use the podium so folks online may hear. And without further ado, I'd like to open it up. Nobody rush up at once. Miss Nika, please.
I guess I want to speak into this too. I guess two things I'd like to know more about are the plan for the sewer plant with regard to who will be allowed to hook on to the plant. In other words, I know that this has been a subject for many years with the people in the town, of course, not allowed to hook on unless, for instance, there's a special vote or special situation with regard, as there was to Jackson Gore. But for individual citizens people who own a home and want to get on the sewer plant, for instance, the people at the lakes where there's a need to be connected to a sewer plant, and what might be considered for them in that if this passes and they now are, as I would say, I guess, entitled to be on the plant, provided they paid or whatever, but they won't be it seems to me they won't be considered any differently since they will all be members of the village, or the village and town are one, and the people in the village have always been able to get on to the sewer plant, regardless of whether maybe they had to pay, maybe they had to do something, but as citizens of the village, they could get on. They don't have to be citizens. They have the homes or whatever in the village can get on, not a citizen. And so the issue is, of course, in that we will all be the same. Can the people who are presently in the town, the homes and businesses presently in the town, will they be allowed to hook on to the sewer plant? How will that, and if not, how will that work? I'm just wondering about how will that whole thing work. The other issue that I'm interested in hearing more about is the electric light department. And one thing is, will the present board be elected by the people, or will they be appointed by the select board? And just a little bit more about that. And not just that, but what will that relationship be with the electric light department? Thanks.
Thank you for your questions, Ms. Nicka. As for the sewer plant, I would let Ms. Wu probably speak more to what's happening at the sewer plant. Mr. Greenslet?
Well, I worked at the treatment plant for about 40 years. I don't know. I have a loud voice. Okay. I worked at the treatment plant for about 40 years, and there was a dispute over whether big corporations who had a lot of money could hitch on the sewer plant, and if some private individual who were on the mountain had the money to hitch on, if they could hitch on. And at that time, the Board of Trustees determined that if someone came in with the money, they could hitch on. And that was probably late 80s or early 90s.
Thank you for that insight, Mr. Greenslet.
Answer Alice's question? So
So
Yes.
I can touch more on the sewer plant, at least from my experience.
Please.
So to the best of my knowledge, the way the policy works today is that if you are within the sewer main range, right, of where the sewer main is, and you wish to hook on, you are responsible for the cost to get to the main. Now it's, let's just say, not necessarily practical to say that the last house on Town Farm Road will ever be on the sewer and water, because the main doesn't extend that far. To the best of my knowledge, there's currently no planned expansion of the sewer main, but I could be incorrect on that. But if I know from your example, Alice, of that the main is actually fairly close to your house, am I correct in that?
Yes.
So that if you said, hey, I have a septic issue, I want to get on the sewer main, you would be responsible for the cost to put your own line to hitch on, as everyone else currently has done in the past.
Is there still a fee for the sewer hook-ons, the gallonage fee?
Yes, sir.
That's still in effect.
Correct.
So they would have to pay the gallonage fee plus the cost of the construction.
Yeah, in the infrastructure, yes. So Ms. Nicka, you made a reference to the Lakes region. I believe the sewer and water run to almost end of Doug Road at the current state. And I think we should be clear about this. Whoever doesn't use the service wouldn't pay for it. So Lakes region wouldn't pay for a sewer wastewater bill. They wouldn't receive that, or a water bill, because they're not on it. I think if the Lakes region wanted to get that, there could be a coalition of owners that then raise the funds and go about it that way. Electric light department, I don't think much changes on the electric light department. They're their own entity. They run their own budget, and they, I believe, appoint their own folks.
Logan may have some insights there.
Mr. Nicole, he serves on the electric board.
Just some context to add. I was Logan Nicole. I was the member of the public at the time that was on the charter committee, that wrote the charter plan. And now I'm an electric light commissioner. So we had, as an electric light commissioner, we had asked for some changes to the merger plan because we didn't like the structure of the electric light commission. So there are some changes in this to the function, to the way that things function today. And the main change to that is that right now, the Electric Light Commission is elected by the village. The Electric Light Department serves people in the village, but it also serves people in the town. It serves people in Proctorsville. It serves people in Plymouth. Technically, we have service in Mount Holly, although there's nobody actually connected to Mount Holly at the moment. But we found it, we didn't like the idea that we are elected by the village, even though we serve outside of the village and a lot of people in the town. And so we asked, the Electric Light Commission, we asked for this plan to make our board a 5-member board. Right now it's only 3 members. And we asked for it to be elected by anybody the whole town will now vote on who is an electric light commissioner. We also want the board to include representation from the other two municipalities that we serve. Those members will be appointed from within the ratepayers of those towns. So it will be a 7-member board if, assuming this merger plan passes. Just on context with the water and wastewater, my understanding from serving on the merger committee was that really at the end of the day, the water department, the wastewater department, and the electric department, they are technically village entities, but they are fully funded by the ratepayers of those systems. And they are really not in any way funded by the village or otherwise connected to the village. There are people that live in the village right now that do not pay for water and wastewater, one or the other, because the systems are completely separate. And your electric bill is not connected to your village taxes or your village bill at all. If you have Ludlow Electric, you pay Ludlow Electric bill. It's not related to your village taxes in any way. And the same really goes for the water and wastewater. Your water bill funds the water department. Your wastewater bill funds the wastewater department. They're not connected to the village really as it stands. There are people in the village that don't have water right now, that don't have town water. There are people in the village that don't have town wastewater. They're just completely different systems. That is a lot of the reason that I've been an advocate for this merger and for merging the village and the town.
Recording in progress.
A lot of people, there is a lot of administrative overhead done by municipal staff right now just trying to split the bills between all these departments and the town of the village. And so I think that they spend a lot of time. I have thought since I was on the select board years ago that they do a great job, but they spend a lot of time just trying to figure out whether they should bill this to the village, to the town, to the water, to the sewer, and just the administrative cost of them having to do that seems a little silly to me because I don't think that we do much as a village anymore now that we don't do trash pickup that everybody doesn't benefit from. And so there's just it seems like a lot of administrative overhead for no real benefit.
One question for you. You
Yeah.
mentioned there's a couple houses in the village that are not hooked up to water. Is that at their own, that's their choice?
I don't know the specifics. I know from our discussions that is true. I don't know exactly why, but I know that there are people that are in the town that have water, that have town water and have town sewer. So I really don't think that they're related. And I have been in trustee meetings before where I think Foursquare Hospitality was considering whether we could extend the line to Fox Run because they wanted to be on town water and town sewer. And so I know that if you have the money, it's ultimately up to the water and sewer commissioners whether they want to allow you to hook onto the system. I also know that I have heard, I have heard in those meetings, just public meetings, you can go back and look at the minutes, that we overall have a lot of water. Our aquifer is oversized for what we're currently serving. In the winter, we do have a higher population, but we still have plenty of water. And in theory, we could be serving a lot more houses.
My point is
Yeah.
that if somebody's in the village and they have a well and they choose to stay there, we're not denying anybody in the village to hook on.
I don't believe so.
It's their own choice to not be on it.
I don't believe so. I think to Mr. Greenslet's point, I think it's all like whether you choose to, you have to pay the cost of that it would take to do the plumbing to get service to your house, whether it's, wastewater service or water service. But I think beyond that, you're allowed to join as long as you want to pay that extra cost.
Right.
And that's my understanding. I haven't been a water commissioner or a wastewater commissioner, but that's the way I've understood the discussions that we've had.
Okay.
Thank you.
You got it, yeah.
Mr. Alden.
Hey, thank you, Eric Alden, Trailside Road. Logan really just hit on a bunch of the points that I was going to mention. But one thing that I discovered just recently is there are a good number of folks that don't even realize there's two entities here in town, that the town and village is separate, which, really enhances the reason why this should, pass. But it seems in my talking with people and listening to folks, the real question that most folks have is, what's the pros and the cons? So maybe the select board or Ms. Wu could hit a couple of bullet points so that folks understand what's the reasoning behind this. I understand it, but a lot of folks haven't followed it, and they're asking, well, tell me why should we do this? What are the pros and cons? Maybe you want to hit some bullet points on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Alden. Ms. Wu, would you like me to take that?
Thanks, Eric. Logan touched on it, and thank you, Logan, for making those comments. So internally, I can honestly say that being here since December 1st, short time, but the administrative costs associated with having two separate governance systems is not in the best interest of the municipality. For instance, when we hire a vendor or a contractor and those costs come in, whether it's $1,000, $10,000, the staff downstairs then has to take that and they have to make a split. If it's determined, first they have to determine whether it's in the village or if it's in the town. And then if the particular project falls funding-wise in both the town and the village, then there is a percentage split that has to occur. And it's typically for your invoices, it's typically a 65% split for town, 35% split for village. That has to be done on every invoice, no matter if it's $100 or a $55,000 paving project. And then once it is then put into the system, it then leaves the municipal clerk's office and it goes across the hallway over to the town clerk treasurer's office, and they have to then do their accounting as such. And so that happens for everything. Salaries are a different percentage. So if we have some employees that do work in both. We have a planning and zoning office, and they do cover both village and town, and salaries are split differently than the invoices. The salaries are split 80% town, 20% village. And so I think back in the day, when I grew up here, we did have garbage service, and I remember my mom used to say, take the garbage down to the, it was Monday morning, take it down, cool, here they come, they're hanging off the back of the truck. And that was one of the perks of living in the village. So you can see the administrative, I call it a burdens. It is a burden on the administrative staff. Now, does that mean that we could then, we don't need as many people? Well, I think that at the end of the merger, if this goes through, it will relieve some of the stress that is occurring right now in those two areas. And we could utilize the time and energy that it takes to process salary, payment, payroll, and paying invoices on other things that would enhance economic development in the town, beautification in downtown, applying for other grants that we could then offset other things like the new wastewater treatment facility, those kinds of things to add to our infrastructure in the entire town, not just the village. So those are the things that I've seen.
May I make a comment?
Sure.
I don't live in the town, but I do take the minutes. And I do recall that there was an issue with the paving, one of the board members might want to pick up after this, the paving of the Okemo Access Road. I believe the town got a grant and the village wasn't able to get a grant. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I've heard from all these years is that this merger will also enable the town as a whole to be more eligible for grants. Is that?
That's correct.
George,
Sorry, but
We don't compete against ourselves, and it makes it so we're more eligible for grant funding, from what we've understood. It's duplicitous at this point. We have, I believe, 600 registered voters in the village, if memory serves, and maybe 2,000 in the town. We didn't touch on office supplies, paper, ink, toner. We did touch on people's time, warnings, posting agendas, ads, things of that nature as well. And thank you, Lish, for that.
Can I'll
Yeah,
touch in. So the paving project was brought up. Thanks, Alicia. And the way it was described to me was that when the town was awarded the grant, it was actually the state was surprised that they didn't realize that the town didn't own the whole road. And it then resulted in the village being told to apply the next year, which changed the paving schedule. And ultimately, the village did not receive any funds to cover that, of which they would have been covered in theory had the merger happened prior to the award of that grant. Another example, which I think we've all still have fresh in our minds, is the 2023 flood. The challenge with two entities trying to recoup money from FEMA. A perfect example is, let's just take a road or a street that is split between the two entities, and where FEMA was so adamant about trying to say, okay, how thick was the gravel laid on the village side, and then how thick was it laid on the town side, and how many hours did the village side have? And that amount of paperwork, if I'm correct to the way Ron Tarble, road foreman, told me, is that there was places that they went back 4 to 5 times to get FEMA data to try to recoup some of that money. And kind of the same theory as if we had been one entity, there wouldn't be a question of, oh, we got billed $10,000 for this repair. Is that an even split, or is that a 10-90 split?
Great point. Yes.
Excuse me, Justin.
Yes, ma'am.
One other point that I've experienced in the last month and a half. The town and village pays approximately $40,000 for an auditor that we are required to have. It's a great checks and balance, but imagine if we merge, we don't have to pay an auditor to look at our village books and to look at our town books. And so instead of maybe 40 grand, maybe it would be 20. We will probably, because of some of the reimbursements from FEMA and because of the flood recovery projects, the auditors have had to take extra time and energy, which means more time and energy for the municipal administrative staff and for the town clerk to go back through the books when we receive reimbursables. And they really want the paper trail. Well, why does this go into the village? Why did it go into the town? Shouldn't this be over on the other side? So I am seeing this firsthand as to why this is a very good thing for the taxpayers in the town and the village.
Yes.
I think they can speak loud enough.
I don't know if they'll be able to hear you on the internet.
That's all I'm assuming.
Thank you.
I guess this question really doesn't apply to the merger, given the way that you've answered that folks can hook on to the sewer system if it's within range and they're paying for it. But does anybody have an idea of how many more folks can hook on to the sewer before the system is overtaxed and just,
It's a great question, and I believe that was brought up at last week's trustee
That is a
meeting.
really good question.
I believe, I would volley this mostly to you, the plant is looking to be rehabilitated in some fashion, and as it stands currently, we are well within our limits for future expansion, but I believe if there's a new plant, it'll be even better.
Added capacity.
so will that open up to more folks being eligible to, I mean, will it expand the lines when that's done?
I don't know about expanding the lines. I would refer this to Miss Wu because she's been handling it more intimately than I have. But the path of the wastewater plant is pretty important to the trustees and the wastewater commissioners. And I know that it's a priority. As of right now, it's running fine and can handle a little bit more. However, our pipes are very old and the infrastructure needs updating before expansion, I would imagine.
And I'm assuming there would need to be some kind of a bond to do that. But will that cost increase for the folks that are on the sewer versus not increasing for folks that aren't on the sewer?
You only pay for the services that you receive. The
Right.
wastewater plant, I believe, is going to be funded primarily not through bond, but I would refer that to Ms. Wu.
So the existing footprint where the wastewater treatment facility is now, as we know, sustained a lot of flood damage, not just from the 2023 flood, but from Irene, and as Mr. Greenslit would say, from previous floods as well. To rebuild that in its existing footprint is approximately $8 million. We are waiting, the town is waiting, and the village, waiting from FEMA to release their final amount estimates for the flood recovery process. And those amounts should be anywhere from 5 to 6.9 million that we will receive to rebuild that plant. If we want to rebuild to another location and add a lot more capacity, then that estimate has been given by our engineers in the tune of $24 million. So we are, in terms of trying to at least meet the $8 million existing rebuild in the existing spot. Not only are we waiting on FEMA for their flood recovery monies, we are also working with the Vermont Emergency Management Department folks, state folks, on doing what's called capital stacking. So there's another grant that we are applying for millions of dollars through the Department of Commerce, federal government, another federal branch. So it is the intent of the board and from my office to, I really want to avoid going to the taxpayers and asking for a bond. Will I reach my objective? I don't know, but I love the challenge. And so that's kind of the game plan. Am I answering your question in terms of how do we rebuild it? What does it cost? It's probably more than enough information.
So you're talking about going to the taxpayers, not just going to the users of this
Well, I want to avoid even going to
either.
the users, the taxpayers. There are federal grants available for this sort of thing. And so first step is getting FEMA's estimate in terms of how much they will give the town for rebuilding it.
Thank you. Mr. Tucker?
Thank you.
So another point, if I'm correct, the way the 8 million was laid out to me is basically no money being spent on flood mitigation, so that if after it was done, we had another 2023 event or an Irene, we'd be back in the same position that we are today.
Correct.
They want to relocate the BFE, I believe, a foot or so above the 100-year mark, if memory serves. So it would, in theory, mitigate it a little bit.
Right, but we'll call it minimally.
Yeah.
It's not like we're building a wall around it.
Correct.
Or
You wouldn't be
anything like that.
flood-proofing it or making it that way. Mr. Greenslit?
rebuild that plant 73, 76, Hurricane Irene. And the same situation has been there since the plant was built. The bridge down there is a 2 channels, but only one channel is actually open. The other one is pretty much closed. And I think if somebody would go down and there's one sewer line going through there, and maybe that would have to be put on a small pump station on the other side of the road so that that channel could be opened up. And it definitely would free up a lot of the water that washed out the sewer plant the last flood.
Thank you. Mr. Couch.
Eric still has his hand up.
Good afternoon, Alan Couch from Meadow Street. Briefly looking through your proposal here of the merger, I noticed some, I guess, confusion in the question of vacancies on the select board and the terms on the select board. It states that 3 members shall serve for a term of 3 years and 2 members shall be elected for a term of 1 year. I'm concerned, I guess concerned is a good word, that 2 of the people will be replaced every year. The 3-year terms obviously are there for continuity, and I get that. I think having certain positions and staggering the elections, I think you run into the possibility of the entire select board being up for election in a particular year. And at the same time, a vacancy, a person will be appointed by the select board to fill that position for the remainder of the year until the next election cycle. And then they would be up for election to serve the remainder of the term. Again, I'm not sure that that's the best way perhaps to run the election cycles for the select board. And I think maybe a little more clarity in that should be investigated. And my other point to Ms. Wu about the perhaps lame ducks once the town and village merge, and having some of these overlaps and extraneous billings and whatnot occur. I certainly think that the number of employees is small enough that a lot of that can be remedied by attrition, and in keeping everyone on for the time being to see how, again, their services could be used and utilized most efficiently is a great idea. So welcome to the town and village. Hopefully welcome to the town, and look forward to working through this process with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Couch. In terms of staggering the select board elections, I think that's a great point. If you read it, it does say, what page is it here? I'm sorry. Page 3. Terms of the office of the members of the select board shall be elected at large. Their terms shall be staggered and commence upon election. 3 members of the select board shall be elected for a term of 3 years, and 2 members shall be elected for a term of 1 year. Meaning that if we merge on July 1, 2027, we hold the elections, 3-year terms are right then in the 1-year term. So on year 4, we'd have all of them up. So that's a good point. Thank you.
Well, won't we just continue what is going on, where every 3 years, a 3-year term goes up, and every 1 year, like, I imagine this is exactly what we're doing at the moment.
So the select board would continue on as, that was my understanding.
So you're saying our terms would carry over through the merger,
Nothing would
meaning that
change.
we wouldn't start
Nothing would.
July 1. Okay.
The best way that it was described to me was that the way it is written is the legal language of how we operate. And I could have been told incorrect by the lawyer, but the best understanding is that the select board terms would carry forth as they have been, with 3 members coming up every year, 2 1-year terms and alternating 3-year terms.
Does that answer your question, Mr. Couch?
Yes, it does.
Perfect. All right, Mr. Alden, please.
Hey, thank you. Just on that select board, I think that's intended just for year 1, and then you would go on to your 3-year commitments, because then it would all be staggered. But it's good to think about. I just wanted to add a comment on the wastewater plant, and the board, and Ms. Wu can confirm or deny, but it's my understanding that the wastewater plant rehabilitation, relocation, restoration has nothing to do and no bearing on whether the town and the village merge. It's a total separate project that needs to be done, and it's not hinged on a yay or nay vote on this merger.
That is correct.
Absolutely
Thank you,
correct.
Eric.
Yep, thank you. Sorry if I,
Excuse me, there's questions here. I don't know if you can read them. From an Eric Lubinsky. May I read them?
Yes, please.
What is the sewer main range as a distance? How much excess capacity the sewer plant currently have? Approximately how many homes does that equate to? Do we have an idea or estimate of the additional wear and tear cost for the additional load per each additional household?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Lubinsky.
Yeah, Lubinsky.
Thank you. We are at a select board meeting tonight. The wastewater commission is the trustees. I'll volley this off to Ms. Wu if she would like to answer it.
those are great, no, those are great questions. I don't want to speak out of turn. I want to make sure that I have a little time to ensure that I can follow up capacity that's going to be available, that is available now. And then what was the other thing? Oh, the range
And cost.
and cost.
And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but really nothing changes with wastewater. Half the mountain's on town sewer. It doesn't necessarily open anyone new up. Like, as it stands now, if you want to pay for it, you can get on it.
They have not denied any, to the best of my knowledge, they have not denied any new buildings that have received allocations, which
Yeah.
is a significant amount of people who have outstanding permits that have yet to, we'll call it, officially hook on in the sense of building their units. I think specifics I don't have. And I don't think we have at hand to answer that question, but I believe there is considerable amount of additional flow capacity at this time.
Because of the questions asked tonight, maybe water and sewer should be at the trustees meeting on their public hearing to answer these questions.
Yes, and we have our first meeting tonight, so these questions are very meaningful, and we will work on getting the proper answers. Is there any other questions on there?
How certain are we that we could contain the rebuild costs within the $8 million? For example, 50% certain, 80% certain.
I don't want to give specifics. I would say that it is a separate issue because it was a flood-affected property. I'll give you the floor if you'd care to speak on it more.
From a pure economic standpoint, the longer we wait, the more expensive it will be, right? I mean,
And we're also at the whims of, funding.
that's right.
Also think investing money into a spot that has been, other than the term habitually damaged, I don't know how else to describe it.
It is the lowest spot of town.
Yeah.
Thank you for your questions on the chat. Mr. Nicole?
I think this was mostly covered, but just touching back on the select board stuff, statutory language is very confusing and it sounds weird sometimes. But this merger plan was written you know, with a lot of help from a lawyer, mostly written by a municipal attorney that practices this stuff. The intention of the merger committee was, for the most part, status quo. And so my understanding at the time when we wrote the language was that the select board would continue basically exactly as it is now. That is how the select board functions, that's how it runs. It sounds different on the paper, but yeah, I was assured by the attorney that that's what it is. This is just status quo. The only real changes to status quo, I mean, in the plan as a whole, the plan as a whole is basically status quo, just the village doesn't exist anymore. But everything else basically stays the same, with the exception of the electric commission will now have 5 voting members from the town and members from the other municipalities that we serve. Right now, we only have 3, and we're elected by the village, which like 30 people show up to the village meeting. So you're elected by 30 people, as opposed to the, like 300 plus that show up to a normal town meeting and vote for select board members. And the water and sewer committee, right now, the water commissioners are elected by the village. That's a separate board. The trustees serve as the wastewater commissioners. And again, the only other change within this plan is that will now be one board that is also elected by the town, a water and sewer commissioners board. That will still be 3 members. I think, from my perspective, I see this as like, let's vote in the status quo. Let's do basically what we've been doing with some small changes where we know they needed, like with the electric commission. But going, like in the future, we can change this plan after it gets adopted. We can amend our charter and we can say, we really want to have a 7-member select board. We really want to have a 5-member water and wastewater board. Those kinds of changes, it was my position when I was on the merger committee that we didn't want to make those changes because we didn't want people to vote against that change and vote against the plan. So the plan is basically just continue as we have it now, and then in the future we can vote on those changes one by one if we think they're needed. But we didn't want somebody to disagree with the idea of a 7-member select board and so vote down the whole merger because of that. But ultimately, I think that is something that I would like for the town to consider, is whether they need a larger board now that there's not a 3-member trustee board, whether there should be more members of the select board, whether there should be other changes to the water and sewer commission, the way the water and sewer departments work. But we just didn't want to put those in front of the town all at once.
Mr. Cole, thank you. We served on the committee together at the merger. Seems like a while ago now. Yeah. Would you mind giving a brief overview of the timeline of this merger? And if, I think you probably remember this, if other towns similar to Ludlow with the town and village have merged, and what the success rate at the state level was?
Ooh, that is a complicated question. I know we based this plan a lot on Lindenville, which was kind of the most recent successful merger. We also based this somewhat on Essex and Essex Junction, which was going the exact opposite way. They were splitting into, Essex Junction is a new municipality in the state within the last couple of years. But we kind of followed what they did because it's the same process, they're just going in the other direction. I think in general, when they go before voters, they're usually successful. I wouldn't want to speak to success rates per se. Timeline-wise, this has been a Groundhog Day. We had the first town public hearing for this plan months ago. And then we were supposed to have what was the first village meeting for this plan, but the trustees didn't have a quorum that day, and so then it threw off the whole timeline and we had to restart this process. That's why we're having what is now the first town public hearing on this plan now. I have not seen the adjusted timeline, but basically we need to have 2 public hearings like this for the town. We need to have 2 public hearings like this for the village. the first one for the village is tomorrow night?
No, next Tuesday.
Next
It is
Tuesday.
the 17th.
Next Tuesday, sorry. And then ultimately, it needs to go to, a vote. It's one of these kooky things, and we talked about this again before, but people that live in the village are gonna get to vote twice, because I vote on village things and I vote on town things. I vote for select board, I vote for trustee. I will vote twice for this proposal. People that live in the town will only vote once. It sounds weird, it's just how it works. We've talked to every lawyer we can about this. That is how it works, it is legal. I don't wanna throw people off, but ultimately we will need a vote on this. Then there will be considerable time for people to, in theory, petition to undo it if they wanna do that. And then at the end of all that, it goes to the legislature and it needs to pass through the legislature. And so some of us from the town will likely end up going to the legislature to try to, convince them to adopt it. Because of the timelines involved here, this may not get to the legislature until next year, because the legislature adjourns sometime in May or June, depending on what's going on in Montpelier. And that will be right around the time that they would be able to consider this. And so it's I would say unlikely that it passes this year. Not impossible, but it would take some considerable movement and lobbying to get it through this legislative session. It's more likely to happen sometime January to May next year.
Thank you.
Yep.
Can I add a point of clarification just to tag on?
Ms. Wu, please.
Thank you, Logan. So the attorney has, we've worked out the timeline with her, and if this does pass, when we vote on it March 24th, we will then the town clerk will have to notify Secretary of State by April 3rd, and then another milestone is April 23rd is the deadline to submit. Saturday, May 23rd is the last day for possible reconsideration of a vote. So we are working toward a very tight time frame, and it is an aggressive time frame, but we're ready to go in front of the legislators and defend, hopefully if the vote passes, to defend this and then implement it. If it does pass, then implementation will occur at the conclusion of fiscal year 27. So that would be next year, July 1st, if that makes sense. Thank you, Logan. Hopefully that maybe helped a little bit.
Ms. Nika.
I'm not sure that I had asked the question of would the select board or the voters elect or appoint, who would do the job of appointing or voting for the electric light commissioners?
That is an elected position that the town people would vote in.
Okay, and
And then they would appoint the two, sorry to interrupt, they would appoint the two commissioners outside of the ratepayers.
The select board would from a list provided by the town.
I'm sorry, what was that?
The select board would appoint two ratepayers from different towns with a non-voting membership on the commission.
The select board or officials in those towns or in our town?
Our town.
And to the group that's elected by the citizens now, those three persons, would they be appointed by the select board or would they be elected by the people?
Elected by the people.
Okay. The other one.
And it would be 5 people.
And it's gonna be 5.
It would be 5 people because it would be increasing by 2.
Okay. The other question, or not a question, but an issue is, I'd just like to give the example of, say, a group of persons on the lakes decided to pay to have the line brought out to the lakes in order for, them to be on the sewer. I'm wondering if, I don't know what your policy would be on something like this, but I've heard of this before, that when someone pays for a line like that, for instance, it used to be with Central Vermont Public Service, now Green Mountain Power, if someone paid to put in a pole like a couple of miles out, paid the full cost to bring the electricity out to that place, that there was a time frame, for instance, 20 years, when anybody else who wanted to hook onto that line would contribute toward the cost of installing that line, even though it was already there but paid for by a group or an individual. And then that 20-year protection would expire, and then anybody along the line could hook on for free. But I think that would be a good policy to look at with regard to the sewer. In other words, if a group on the lakes or some individual who might be extremely wealthy could pay to have the line brought out there, and then it should be a policy perhaps that you, if someone just that far out also wants to get on later, that they would contribute to the cost that that individual paid.
I think that's a great
To at
point.
least, to alleviate some of the cost.
I think that's a great point, and I think if we move forward with this merger, we would have a dedicated wastewater water commission, and their sole goal would be to explore those ideas. Thank you for that. That was great.
I also would like to say it has not always been the case that someone near the line, myself, for instance, who requested to get on and pay to get on, was allowed to. I was definitely told, not allowed. You are not allowed. So just for what that's worth.
Please speak with us again about that at some point, okay?
I'm not trying to get on.
Mr. Greenslet.
The only reason that people would be not allowed to hitch on would be because of extra high flows or extra high BOD loading, which the plant could not handle. That's biological oxygen demand. And when Jackson Gore was designed, we requested that they run their sewer line down Route 103. They would have had to install a couple of pump stations along the way. And that way, if the people in Grahamsville wanted to run a line, they would have part of the line run. And also the Black River Overlook project. But it didn't work that way, and they ran their sewer line up the hill. So we didn't get part of the sewer line run down 103 that we would have liked to have had. One other thing, the Board of Trustees would be appointed by the Board of Selectmen? They're going to be elected by the people.
The selectmen would be elected by the people. The trustees would cease to exist under
They're
the new merger.
appointed.
There would be no trustees.
There would be no trustees.
Correct.
So you people would be the water commissioners, the sewer commissioners, the electric light commissioners?
No. There's a water wastewater commission, there's an electric commission, and then there's the select board.
Where are these people? Are these people going to be elected on the water and wastewater?
Yes, sir.
Or are they going to be appointed?
They would be elected.
Okay.
Great questions. And thank you for the history of the sewer run. You learn something new every day. Thank you. Any questions on the chat?
I don't see anything else.
All right. Mr. Alden.
I love history. Just quickly, I'll leave you with a little historic piece of incorporated villages, which is what this is. Since the 30s and 40s, the trend has been to disincorporate or unincorporate, if you will. And I'm not aware, maybe Logan is, but I'm not aware of any town that has merged or unincorporated its village that has regretted it. So I'd say carry on with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Alden. Sir.
I was going to be quiet, but I figured I'd take the opportunity to introduce myself. I'm Chris Recchia. I started as department manager for Ludlow Electric in October. So hi.
Nice to meet you.
Nice
Hello.
to meet you all. And I know that Penny started in December, so I have twice as much experience. I've really enjoyed it so far, and I think we're doing really well. But this is very important because 3-member commissioners, as great as they are, I need 2 of them to make a quorum. If they meet in the grocery store, they can't talk to each other. Things like that are a little bit difficult. So this would be a good thing for the electric department. So, and the only thing we have to do is we change our name from Village of Ludlow Electric Department to Ludlow Electric Department. Good. So anyway, I just really wanted to introduce myself and say hi.
Thank you very much for that
Thank you.
intro. Thank you for that piece of insight, too. Would anybody else care to share a question or opinion? Anybody on Zoom care to share a question or opinion? Okay.
Oh, Steve.
Mr. Myers.
Yes, it feels to me that everyone on board, including the town manager and most of the town, feels that if we're going to do this, why should it take a year? Let's act in a way that we're moving progressively forward. If this is going to save the town money through accounting, through paperwork, through ink, as Justin said, why would it take a year into 2027 to get this done? Let's get it done. How do we move forward without waiting a year? I guess is what I'm asking.
We can move as fast as we can. The legislative process that Mr. Nicole alluded to is really what will gum up the works. They recess in late May, early June, and then they don't reconvene until January. And that's kind of the holdup, is the legislative approval of the charter.
So I guess then, as a town, we are at the bay of the state, or we can't do what we need to do to save our town a whole bunch of money by just joining the village and the town.
That is unfortunately the reality.
All right.
He was asking why we couldn't conduct the merger faster than the timeline. We're at the behest of the state.
Yeah, he asked if we could just do it without the state approval.
Nope.
So just to clarify, we need state approval to join our town and our village.
Yes, because it requires something called a charter. We'd have to establish charter, and the state would have to approve that charter.
Okay, thank you very much.
Of course. Any other questions? Select board members, any questions, comments? I think this was a great first meeting. Thank you, everybody, for showing up, giving your input, giving us some questions. Very great questions on chat. Thank you. We'll look into that, and we hope to see everybody at the village meeting. Even if you're a town resident, come to the village meeting. And then Thursday, February 26th, there's public hearing number 2 for the town, which is held right here in the Heald Auditorium. Ms. Wu, would you like to add anything tonight? No. I would entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. You guys have it. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.